and the electricity liberates the oxygen, and you'll have a flame. It's one of the easiest fire starters that you can use. You see all this like Naked and Afraid, and they're trying to start a fire, and they got their magnesium strike thing, and they're trying to strike it with iron and make a spark and all that. Actually, if they just brought a box of steel wool and a 9-volt battery, they'd have fire every day, even when it was wet, because you just touch the battery to the steel wool, it burst into flames. Okay? So when we say that oxygen kills bacteria and virus, pathogenic virus, what it's literally doing is on a scale that's too slow. See, now when I'm watching metal rust, it's oxidizing. You've heard that. You maybe didn't know what that meant. It's burning. It's oxidizing, but at such a slow rate that there's no smoke. You don't see the smoke. It's not producing fire, and generally speaking, it doesn't get hot. The rusty metal doesn't get hot. When you take a really thin piece of iron, just a micron or two in thickness, which is what steel wool is, and you expose it to electricity, it oxidizes fast enough that it'll burst into flames. Okay? So at home science, you can do that at home, and you can see how that works. That's how O3 kills bacteria and virus in the body. Okay? And mostly it's because most pathogenic, not all, most pathogenic bacteria and viruses anaerobic. And translate that to mean allergic to oxygen, which is also why if you're ischemic, which means your tissues have a state of low oxygen, pathogenic bacteria will thrive in ischemic tissue because it grows faster in areas where there's nutrients and less oxygen. So when you saturate the body with oxygen, okay, the anaerobic bacteria dies off. The anaerobic virus dies off. And so this is why we use the oxygen, and the fastest way, the safest way, you can get bottled oxygen and get a diffuser and get a cannula or get a face mask or whatever. You can get pure oxygen, and you can breathe pure oxygen, and that will give you a great effect. In fact, that's one of the things that we're doing for treating Parkinson's, is we're giving people low pressure system but pure oxygen. Okay, and it's very, very effective for reducing the symptoms of Parkinson's, for example. Okay, but generally speaking, you have to have a license and you have to have a physician's prescription to buy oxygen. You can't just go to the oxygen store and buy a tank of oxygen. They're not going to sell that to you. If you have a welding shop and a business license as a welder, you can buy oxygen because it's used in oxyacetylene torches. But it's not hospital grade. It's not considered human grade. It's not, you would have to filter that oxygen before you could use it, and that's a whole nother system. And those systems can get very expensive. All right? This is cold cathode. It concentrates the oxygen out of ambient air, out of ambient atmosphere at sea level, and this unit works best right here where we're at, because at sea level the atmosphere is as dense as it's going to get. So for example, in Denver, you should run this unit longer. Like here I just do one 5-minute cycle for an 8-ounce glass of water. If I was in Denver, I would do 2. Why? Because the oxygen in the atmosphere in Denver is actually almost not quite half of what it is here, depending on where you live, your actual altitude. Above 13,000 feet, half for here. One of the reasons why doctors traditionally prescribe retreats in the South, places like Warm Springs, Georgia, that's where President Roosevelt used to go. And even in the South, like in parts of Arizona and so on and so forth, it's not because of the dryness of the air, okay, because Georgia is totally humid, Florida is totally humid, Arizona's dry. However, parts of Arizona are at sea level. There's actually areas in Arizona that are below sea level. Florida is at sea level. Parts of Georgia are at sea level. The oxygen in the atmosphere is denser at the ocean. It's part of the reason why going to the beach makes you feel better. It's not just the beach. It's that you're actually breathing a denser, a more oxygen-enriched atmosphere. And that has an effect, and it has a healing effect. It reduces inflammation. It supports having less infection. It is good for cognitive and so on. Like it perks you up like coffee. That's just being at the beach. And then if you get your feet in the sand, now we got a plasma polarity thing going on with the polarity of the ground and the air, and you're drawing plasma up through your body, which is invigorating electrically every cell in your body. And that's where the blood electrification comes in. Because part of this whole disease profile, and my friend Dr. Jerry Tennant has written about this extensively. He's also a former NIH scientist who's now in private practice in Houston, Texas. And Jerry's treats cancer by increasing voltage in his patients. That's one of his cancer treatment strategies. First thing is he treats them for mineral deficiencies. Why? Minerals are electrolytes. Minerals are the transport mechanism for ionic exchange in the body. So if you are deficient in trace minerals, then you will also be deficient in certain voltage or expressance of capacitance, resistance, and reactance. Those are the electrical values of the cells, because you don't have the ion, the mineral or salt ions that allow for those exchanges to take place. And so first thing you do is super nutrition, dense nutrition, trace minerals, iodine, all that stuff. And then you do things like this to increase the reactance and the capacitance of the cells to hold and to transfer electricity. That's his primary cancer strategy. He is famous for helping people with cancer. You can go to Dr. Tennant's clinic tomorrow. Well, you have to have an appointment. Jerry Tennant, Dr. Tennant, he's in our association. He's one of our association docs. But he's written a book on voltage in the body. Okay? And I highly recommend that. Over on the end there, we have a device which is called the biotuner. And the biotuner was in a previous life known as the black box. And it became famous in China, and more specifically in Hong Kong. There was a really famous incident in the past. This is now about 30 years ago. There was a huge epidemic happening at this time of opium and heroin addiction, where masses of people were overdosing and were being treated for heroin addiction, and this is while Hong Kong was still under the British. Okay, one of the Chinese docs decided to treat, he believed that he could treat heroin addiction and withdrawal by doing acupuncture on the auricular points on brainstem 1 and using the brainstem points in the earlobe to treat the DTs, or the worst part of the expression of the withdrawal from heroin, right? And he started doing that, and he was having really great success. Put a needle in brainstem 1 to take the edge off, and it was really working really well, okay? And then this idea of the acuscope had come into vogue in the 70s, which was to electrically stimulate acupuncture points. And so he thought, well, what if I take those needles that I'm putting in brainstem and I electrically charge them, and I do an alternating polarity, multiphasic, biphasic square wave form as an electrical signal to stimulate the needles, because that had been determined to be the best electric waveform for pain. Okay? And it's used for sedation. And so he did that, and he had a patient that was full-blown DTs that he wired up, got the needles in, put the alligator clips and hit the on button, and when he hit the on button, they stopped. They were in full-on hallucination, skin crawling, felt like there was a million bugs on their skin, and were freaking out. And when he hit the on button on the Acuscope, they went like this, just settled down. And literally, the symptoms of their DTs went away. And so he realized there's something about the acupuncture point, there's something about the electrical stimulation of the acupuncture point, there's something about what are DTs, what is heroin withdrawal, is this process of struggle between the receptors of the natural opiates, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, and the heroin molecule itself, and that is actually an electrical exchange. And he did all the math, and he came up with a machine, and he wanted to promote this. He said, but everyone can't do acupuncture, and everyone doesn't have access to acupuncture needles. And so he basically came up with this idea of taking magnets and using a magnet to deliver an electric charge to the acupuncture point, and have the magnetic field, because the magnetic field will be deeper than the point, okay, and will actually pervade if you're not exactly on the right point. See, this is a problem with acupuncture. Technically speaking, you can't be sloppy and get the results. Technically speaking, in acupuncture, the needle has to be precisely in the point, and some of the point locations are within the tolerance of the width of a human hair. So you can't be sloppy. That's half the whole deal with acupuncture school, is learning how to measure and place points. Exactly, so you hit the same point every time, every time, every time, every time. But most people can't do that. Most acupuncture doctors can't do that, believe it or not. 4 years of training, you still can't hit the point, okay? Why do we know that? Because on the acupuncture boards, they're not always 100%. Sometimes they're 80, okay? So with a magnet, though, that's different. See, when I clip the magnet on, the magnet creates an electrical field, which is densest in the center of the magnet. So I try to place it as accurately as possible on the point. But the magnet creates a field, so if I'm off a little bit, I'm still going to hit the point with stimulation. Okay? And then this unit, which looks like the silver pulsar, but it's not. They just use the housing. That's a way to save money. Okay, because they had 1 million of these housings made. So let's see, what else can we put in one, you know? And this has 6 different programs. But for example, one of the programs that is in this is for drug withdrawal, which could be heroin, could be crack cocaine, could be tobacco, could be smoking. There's also a program here for sleeping, because it stimulates delta brainwave activity directly. Okay? So the black box became world famous, became very, very famous, especially with acupuncture doctors. And then Dr. Beck got a hold of it and refined the schematic, and to make it more efficient, a cleaner waveform, 6 different programs that would create different levels of emphasis for norepinephrine versus dopamine versus whatever, so that you get an effect versus relaxation versus pain versus sleep, okay, versus stimulation of cognitive function, okay. And this is using electricity, and this is using magnetism to do all of those things. And if you were withdrawing from drugs or heroin or tobacco or anything else, this is what I would use. And I would hook you up to this while I'm doing the Thai session. See, it has an arm strap, clips on your arm just like the blood electrification, and I just would throw it on you, And I would have you having this stimulation while I would do the treatment. That's what when we say it's integrative practice. It means we can do multiple layers of things at the same time. We can use magnets while doing Thai sessions. We can do blood electrification while doing Thai sessions. We can do brain tuning stimulation while we're doing Thai sessions. I can have you drink a glass of hyperoxygenated water before and after a session. Guess what it helps with? Herxheimer's effect, so-called detox effect of getting strong body work. Why? Because oxygen is the antithesis of lactic acid. And if you want to resolve lactic acid as fast as possible, you introduce oxygen into the system. Cancel, cancel. It neutralizes the lactic acid immediately. It also will reduce or eliminate trigger points almost immediately. One of the beautiful things. Okay? And then also far infrared. Far infrared light, like this is a unit. Okay, this is a consumer unit. These are great. It's less than $200. Okay? The next best clinical unit is 1,000, and the next best clinical unit after that is 3,000 to 5,000. So as a consumer unit, this is my favorite because I've gotten to know the people that make those a little bit, and they're engineers, and they guarantee the wavelength. And it has an indicator. This has two different frequencies. One is for superficial, good for skin. One is for deep, good for soft tissue injuries like the knee injury. And far infrared will penetrate the body. It won't go through bone, okay, as well. But actually it will go through bone. It's interesting. Light will go through bone. Bones are actually porous to certain frequencies of light. Rob, would you plug this in for me? Swap out any of those. It's fine. Right now it's producing the far infrared. This LED here is set up in such a way that all of the infrared emitters are working, or this light won't come on. So if I hit the switch and this light comes on, then it's not producing. See, far infrared is invisible. You cannot see it. Okay? However, visible red light spectrum in the 800 nanohertz is also therapeutic. And so this is using the red light. Now I have both on. I have the far infrared and I have the visible, near and far infrared. Okay, 60 and 80, okay, 800, 66 and 800. I have near and far infrared, okay? Now watch this. If I put my hand over it, turn the light off. Let's see if we can see a little better. You should be able to see the bones in my fingers. You see that? You see that shadow in the middle? That is actually the bone. Okay? If I go up in a dark room at night, if I even put the palm of my hand over it like this, you can see the carpal bones in my hand, which is showing you that the far infrared is completely penetrating the tissue. So this will penetrate 4 or 5 inches into the body easily. 4 or 5 inches. And that is enough to create the chemical changes in the ATP mechanism, to reduce the inflammation, to increase the oxygen loading capacity. That's the ATP part of the cells. Okay? And there are other benefits. In fact, if we were talking about like the Bibles of infrared clinical applications, they're huge. There are thousands of clinical trials. And infrared lasers are used for all kinds of medicine now, even with racehorses. So if you have a $1 million racehorse that has a bruised or damaged tendon, tibialis, it's called a bowed tendon or an inclination toward bowed tendon. In the past, that used to be a crippling injury to a racehorse. And if the vet certified that they had what we call in humans a shin splint, that's what it's called in humans, the same injury. Bowed tendon in horse, shin splint in human. But if you were a horse with that injury, they would shoot you. In other words, the treatment for a racehorse with a bowed tendon is to shoot them, because it was not considered recoverable because they're too heavy and they can never get off of it long enough for it to heal. Well, it was discovered that a combination of far infrared and PEMF can completely, fully and completely recover a bowed tendon injury in a racehorse, all right, by the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. They discovered this, okay? Well, the first horse that it was used on saved $1 million, because that horse was valued at more than $1 million. And the vet had recommended that it be put down, euthanasia, for humane reasons, because the injury is not recoverable, which is why the owners volunteered it to the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. And they did this experimental therapy using PEMF and far infrared, and they were able to completely heal and recover, and the horse went on to have many more races, which it won. So it went from a cool $1 million loss, 100%, to the horse was able to continue racing and winning races and making money. So in racing today, you will not find a veterinary practice or a medical practice in a stable that does not have this kind of gear. Not if the horses have any value, you won't. Well, the interesting thing about the University of Pennsylvania veterinary studies in both infrared and PEMF, biomagnetic field therapy, is that in horses there's no such thing as placebo. So in other words, they didn't convince the racehorse that it was not going to die and that it was going to heal. You know? Come on, bag of bones. You're going to make it. You're going to heal. You're going to, you know, I don't know. I don't recall what the horse's name was. But they didn't convince the horse that it wasn't going to die. They didn't convince the horse that it was going to have less pain, less swelling, less inflammation, expedited tissue regeneration. They didn't convince the horse of any of this. They just slapped the magnet on it and slapped the light on it and waited to see what would happen. There are thousands of studies on using infrared light to heal human injuries as of right now. Volumes, okay? You can look it up. You don't have to worry about that. One of my favorite sources is Thor Laser. They manufacture medical infrared lasers, okay? Consumer units use LEDs. Why? You don't have to have a license. There's no danger of permanently blinding if you accidentally look at the light, okay? But medically, the most powerful far infrared units used in orthopedic medicine are actually laser. And multi-head, multi-frequency lasers are very expensive. Can be up to upwards of $150,000. Okay, yeah.
So couldn't they use like a laser instead of chemotherapy, like for centralized cancer treatment?
For some they could, yes. Whether they would or not, don't know. Could they? Yes. Far infrared is good for cancer in a strange way, because I heard this from a massage therapist. They were told in school that you can't massage a person with cancer or around a cancer because you increase the circulation and you're going to spread the cancer, okay? That it's like Middle Ages, Dark Ages, Middle Ages mythology that cancer is a demon spirit kind of thing, you know? Because if you have cancer anywhere in your body and you have a tumor, you have cancer everywhere in your body. And so no amount of massaging around the tumor is going to make that tumor go somewhere else in your body or spread to other organs. It already has. Years ago, years before you even knew you had a tumor, it was already everywhere else. But the tumors grow at different growth rates, is why you don't see them immediately. So you remove this one and boom, this one pops up. Circulation is not going to be to your detriment. An increase of circulation. Why? Because your body is fighting the cancer. And it has to deliver the stem cells, and it has to deliver the immune factors that are going to resolve the primary and secondary infections around the cancer some way, somehow, and actually reducing inflammation and increasing oxygen and increasing circulation is anti-cancer strategy. In most European cancer trials, it's about increasing oxygen, increasing body temperature around the tumor, but no, the whole body. Why? Because the cancer is already everywhere. So even if you have breast cancer, we do a whole body diathermy. We don't just do breast diathermy. Okay? Although we'll do that too. The Chinese docs tend to do more localized stuff with the far infrared. European, it's more whole body. Just different philosophies, right? But using the same types of technology. So can you? Yes. Yes, you can. Now I want to do a couple other things. A lot of people, some people just still have this weird anti-fetish about energy, that I don't believe energy is scientific. I don't believe that people have energy. It's unscientific. You can't prove that you have energy. You can't prove that you can touch something and change the way it circulates, like even with acupuncture or acupressure. Is that you can't prove that by putting pressure on point hoku on your hand that you're going to move or change the energy of anything. And that's why I don't believe in it. It's all hogwash. All right? Those people are ignorant. And I mean it in the classical sense of the word, uneducated. Okay? Because A, we're nothing but energy. So we are energy, and we can affect energy around us. It's a proven fact. It's scientific. It's easily verifiable. If you want to look behind the curtain, just a teeny tiny bit. This is a toy, okay? It's a children's toy sold by Edmund Scientific. They're really cheap. It's hand-blown glass. It has a little bit of alcohol. It's colored, so it makes it easier to see, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a volume of fluid 6 inches with the power of my mind. If I use the magic hands, sometimes it works faster. And then when it gets to the top, I'm going to move it all there. I'm going to boil it. Almost. See, it's more dramatic, you know, it's like more magical.
Oh.
Okay. It's really elementary physics, in a way, even simple math, that to move a volume of water a distance requires energy. To move anything anywhere in any distance requires energy. If I know the volume of the water and I know the distance I'm moving it, I could actually do the math and I could tell you how much energy it takes to do that. I'm producing that energy 24 hours a day, whether I'm thinking about it or not, whether I'm applying it or not. And also, if I can physically move an object 6 inches, just by being close to it, levitation, if you will. What if I, instead up here on the top, what if I put a switch up here, a float switch, so that when the volume of the fluid here gets to the top, it actually triggers the switch on or off. I could actually make a switch that all I'd have to do is touch it. Wait a minute. Touch sensitive switch? Is it the pressure that makes the switch work? No. They have different kinds. One is electrical conductivity, the change in electricity, the actual electric charge difference between my finger and the surface of the skin of the switch, right? Whenever we have two different values of energy in proximity to each other, the stronger influences the weaker. It's a factor of field, okay? But the idea is here, I'm moving something passively, just using the energy that's naturally coming from my body. Guess what? When I put my hand on your body, it's doing this, whether you see it or not. We've done treatment. My friend Eliezer did this for me, where I did a treatment, a Thai treatment, and then what we did was we turned off all the lights and we used a thermal camera, and you could actually see everywhere I thumb pressed on the client an hour after the treatment was over. Literally, traces, you can see thumbprint, 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 an hour after the treatment. So the temperature was elevated every place I had touched on the person's body, and there were whole regions that were elevated that weren't before the treatment. It stayed elevated up to 4 hours after the treatment was over. Energy. It means I imparted something to the person when I touched them, which continued to have an effect for hours. Some people say for days. Depends on the practitioner. Okay? If you'll try not to break it, just go the opposite way if you want to empty it.
What is it called?
It's called a bubbler. Here, let's pass this around. Just don't drop it. It is actually quite fragile. So here's another one that I like that proves that we have energy. Okay? And again, this little thing is a toy, but it was invented by Nikola Tesla, not as a toy. This is actually a Tesla coil. It's a baby Tesla coil. And because the glass has a slightly different voltage and polarity from the Tesla coil that's in the middle, you have plasma streaming from the Tesla coil to the surface. Each of those blue lines is the same as a spark you get if you step across the carpet and you touch the knob or someone's nose and it goes boop. But the temperature, here's the crazy part. The average temperature of those blue lines is somewhere around 4,000 degrees. It's around 4,000 degrees. But what you can't tell is that this is an alternating current. So even though it looks like the blue lines are fairly solid, they're really not. They're mostly not there. We're seeing the blue lines. We're actually seeing like a trace of what was there a second ago. Okay? So that's why the globe doesn't get so hot. It just bursts into flames and melt. Okay? However, I have my own electromagnetic field. And as I get close to another electromagnetic field, it will recognize that, and it will begin to cluster, and it will begin to focus on me. And so right now, that's you, that's me, 24 hours a day with this very low voltage. It's about 8.4 to 8.8 volts, slightly less than 9 volts, that your body is producing 24 hours a day. That's why you can put a 9-volt battery right on your tongue and you get a tingle, but your tongue doesn't burst into flames. Okay? Because we're almost the same voltage. If we were exactly the same voltage, you wouldn't be able to tell if the battery was good or not. Because you'd put the battery on your tongue, you wouldn't feel anything. So a dying or dead battery, you put it on your tongue, guess what? It's less than 9 volts, you get no tingle. But at 9 volts, I put it on my tongue, I get a tingle. All right, you got it? So that's electro and a magnetic field, and I'm producing heat. By the way, that's called metabolism, but it's also an EMF effect. It's why my paddle gets hot, is the same reason you get hot. And then when I come into proximity, you can see it reacting to me. I'm not even touching it. And then as I get closer and have a better contact, not only do you see the primary conduit of the flow of plasma between the source and my finger, it's traveling quite a distance, and actually my finger's getting hot. See, now I've concentrated all that plasma into one spot, and it's starting to get hot where I'm touching it. But also notice the harmonics. The harmonics are all these little side jets of plasma that are coming off the top. So we have the coil, which is speaking to me, and me to the coil as a current between me and the coil. See, it's too hot. I have to let go. In a minute, it'll get too hot to touch. Okay? It's a toy, but it's not a toy. Tesla said, if I can do this, then I could actually light up the whole world without a wire. I could actually create a generator where all you have to do to light your bulb is stick it in the ground. Because all I need is a ground, a shift, a way for the ions to travel. So it goes generator, ground, atmosphere. Generator, ground, atmosphere. And so I plug my light bulb into the dirt 100 feet from the generator, boop, it lights up. No wires, and for free. And this one generator, see, it can create 1 light, 2 light, 3 light, 4 light, 5 light. It doesn't care. It doesn't take any more energy to light 5 than to light 1 using this principle. That's why some of us, it's why we like Tesla. Okay? Any questions? So you have energy. And don't ever believe for a second that you don't. Or that it's a myth just because you can't see it. Okay? The reason you can't see your energy is because your eyes are not so good or you're in the wrong light. Okay? There's 100 different ways that we can measure the energy that you are producing right this very second. And it is substantial enough to move, to do work, to create physiologic change in real time. And we can prove that scientifically with a child's toy. It's easy. When we use these devices, we're using natural energies. See, we're not using unnatural energies. We're using natural energies that are not harmful. That's the whole point. Okay? To supplement. Part of the theory of disease process in Oriental medicine, Thai medicine, Chinese medicine, is that you have a deficiency of certain values of energy. Let's call them frequencies. Another way of thinking of the 5 elements, for example, is that there are different frequencies of ionic manifestation, if you will, from less dense to more dense, to higher frequency to lower frequency. Okay? And what we're doing is we're balancing all of these things all at the same time. And so when I touch you on the mat, I am touching you electrically, I am touching you magnetically, I am touching you physically. So there's physical work being had. There is electrical discharge, which is having an effect. There is a magnetic field, which is having an effect. Plus, 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 plus. And I can prove it. And you can prove it. You can have confidence in it. So you don't worry about whether what you do is working or not. See, that's the whole point. I want to get you to this point where you never think about that again. I wonder if what I'm doing is having an effect. I wonder if what I'm doing is doing any good. I wonder if what... I want to see you get to a point where that's the one thing you don't wonder. You can wonder other things. Can I do this better? Is there another way to do this? How can I enhance the effect that I'm already having? But don't ever worry about whether you're having the effect and whether that effect is therapeutic. We are built to have this exchange. It's part of the, if you want to call it intelligent design, but it is actually part of our intelligent design biologically, is that we are made to work with each other in this fashion. That's part of our life cycle. And I've heard this expressed a couple of different ways. One of my friends said it's God's humility clause. God's humility clause. And what is God's humility clause? He says, we all have an itch you can't scratch. We all have an itch you can't scratch. It's God's humility clause. That means at different points in my life, I have to have you to help me. I have to have you. I have to have you. I must have you. You must help me. Only you can help me. I can't do it myself. I have an itch I can't scratch. I have an issue I can't resolve. I have to have somebody else to help me with that. God's humility clause. And that is, by the way, the origin of medicine. Ultimately. Not philosophical. Philosophical, I say, once we understand suffering and we have compassion and care and we want to reduce suffering, we struggle to find practical ways to do it, and that is a generation of medicine. Okay? But I want to say the ultimate origin started when we were a mud bug and we had an itch we couldn't scratch. And so we kind of sidled over to our friend mud bug, close enough that they couldn't get away. And then as they were trying to get away, they scratched our itch. And then we realized that we liked it and chased them. And there's the invention of sex. I have an itch. I just got this itch. If you raise dogs or you've been around animals, you notice a lot of times that's how you tell they're in heat, because they start acting like they got an itch. And they start looking for some. First it's objects to scratch, to rub on, to scratch, and then eventually if they could find another boy or girl or whatever, no, I think you're made to scratch this itch. You could probably do that really well. And next thing you know, now you got puppies. Okay? But that is actually also medicine, is this origin. Okay, I know it's wacky, but what can I say? As far as the colloidal silver, I wanted to just leave this out for you to look at. So a lot of people are still poo-pooing colloidal silver. Okay? I'm going to try and get a copy of this video that I saw a section on 60 Minutes. I watched late last night where 60 Minutes did an article on superbugs and on antibiotic-resistant drugs, okay? And they talked to some of the leading drug scientists in the world who said that by the year 2050, there'll be no antibiotics, that nothing that we have will work as an antibiotic. And it's making them crazy. And this one researcher, and I'd love to show you this because you got to see this experiment. Cipro is the most powerful antibiotic made in the world. It's actually was developed by the U.S. military to fight anthrax infection. It was invented by the U.S. military under DARPA contract to be an antidote to an anthrax infection, biologic warfare. Okay, so right now that's it. That's this most powerful antibiotic is Cipro. All right. In this experiment, the scientists made a pool that had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 distinctive containers that were separate but had slight little perforations between them, so that some of the fluid hypothetically could go from one to the other. And then on the ends, they filled with a solution that was 100 times diluted Cipro. And then the next one in, they did one that was 10 times. And the next one in, they did one that was 1,000 times, not diluted, but more concentrated Cipro. And in the center was pure liquid Cipro. And then he took a syringe and he inoculated one drop on this far side. This is 6 feet long. One drop over here with the staph bacteria, and then he put one drop over here with the staph bacteria, and then they watched and filmed it to see how long it would take for the bacteria to mutate until it could live off of 100% pure Cipro in the vat. And do you know how long it took? Probably not. 7 days. 7 days. And so as the bacteria proliferated and migrated into the next, and finally both sides met in the middle, okay, each generation that moved to the stronger Cipro was a mutation of the previous generation. In other words, the bacteria was dying off 99% in the first generation, but 1% survived and made it to the next level. Then 99% of that would die off, and then 1% would make it to the next level. It took 7 days to go from a dilution that was only 10% Cipro to one that was 100% Cipro, and the bacteria was consuming the antibiotic as food.
Wow.
All right, so here's the thing. Silver will kill staph bacteria on contact, and staph will never develop an immunity or mutate to be able to live in a silver bath ever. Why? Because the process that silver uses is electric, and it is an electrical combustion. It combusts the bacteria. So there is no 1% survive. If the bacteria is exposed to the silver, it goes poof. Wilhelm Reich actually did high-speed, 30,000x, 30,000, he did 30,000x microscopy. This is before the invention of the electron microscope. And he actually was able to do short videos of bacteria being exposed and going like this. It goes literally like hemorrhages, boom, like a bomb. Okay, but it's combustion. It's the combustion of the bacteria. Okay, some of the articles that talk about this are in this book by my friend Steve Barrett. I'm going to leave this. Steve is who makes this. Okay, he also publishes a monthly newsletter where he collects new research on silver and on various topics. Could be almost anything. Okay, all right. So I'm going to leave this. Also, we'll put that over. And I think that's all. I just want to ask, are there any other questions, thoughts, considerations, observations?
Do you have a good source for us to purchase?
On the, Julie, we're,
Oh,
sorry.
no worries.
Thanks for asking. And also on the website, there's a link for soda and a link for, on Thai Yoga Center, on the store, and a link for Silver Edge.
Are there another resources for colloidal minerals like gold or?
No, we don't really, there's not the same level of research. It's not a traditional medicine.
I saw it somewhere, I don't know.
You can make a colloid of any metal. Any. You can make a colloid of any metal. It's electrolysis. That's why when we make the silver, we have to use pure distilled water, because whatever's in the water will become part of the colloid. If there's nickel in the water, it'll be colloidal nickel. If there's gold in the water, it'll be colloidal gold. If there's what? We don't use gold or any other precious metal for this purpose. We only use silver. Yeah. Nope, because all of this is miatomic. Colloidal silver is miatomic. And I make my own silver. I have a silver maker. I've always make it. And the only thing that's new as far as me making silver now is that I have a Hanna Instruments particulate laboratory grade meter that I can now do before and after testing for parts per million for the silver, and I do that just for my own satisfaction. It's really gratifying to to do the math and use the meter and see it's like 15 parts per million or whatever. And that tells me how long to cook it, or confirms how long somebody else told me. So they said, you know, if you if you cook it for 3 hours, you're going to have 5 to 8 parts per million, then I want to see that. If 6 hours is 10 to 15, I want to see that. And what makes the difference, why it's not exactly the same every time, is because even pure distilled water has a slightly different specific gravity from batch to batch. Even you purchase distilled water, they're not exactly the same. Like when I test the distilled water before I use it, and I always get somewhere between 3 and 6 parts per million. So some distilled water's got 6 parts per million of something. Okay? It's not pure, 100%. And the only way I could get to 100% would be to make the distilled water myself. You know, in a glass distiller. Yeah.
And it'd be overcooked and the
No,
dilute effect
no,
if it's
no,
okay.
no, no. The longer you cook it, the stronger it gets. Up to a point. There's this point, it's called saturation based on specific gravity. So when you get to 20, it won't go 25. Why? Because specific gravity of the water. And the only way I could get a higher percentage in the water would be to have a different kind of water, like deuterium water or hard water or something like that. I'd have to have a different kind of water if I wanted to get a really high, like a 50 parts per million. It'd have to be like a hydrogen saturated deuterium water. That's what it would have to be. And that would be expensive for me to make. And time consuming. Because to make a gallon of deuterium water would take me about 3 days. Okay. Yes?
So Steve's machine versus the other one, is that also, that's maybe at a different website than this? So
Yeah, completely different.
Okay.
Silver edge.
And that one's more expensive, Steve's is?
No,
No, silver edge, okay.
no. The difference is the soda instrument is dual purpose, blood electrification and silver. Steve is just purely dedicated to making silver.
Okay.
And I've tested it, I've tested others. I've had other silver makers. The voltage and the amperage that the electrolysis is done at actually determines the rate of electrolysis. And all machines are not equal. They're not all equal. But if I took those 2 silver wires and wrapped them around a 9-volt battery and just stuck it in some distilled water, it would make colloidal silver. Okay? But it wouldn't be at the density or at the speed that this would. Because it's 120 volt. All right, what else? Thoughts, comments,
I have a
observations?
water filler, but it's a metal thing, so I can't use that. Distilled
No,
water.
you can use it. It's probably the same as what you get at Publix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. And you can, and I just buy my distilled water from Publix. Why? Because it'll be 10 years before I could afford a distiller would pay itself off. Okay? Because I pay $1 a gallon at Publix, sometimes less.
Right.
$1 a gallon, and a good distiller is $500 or more. All right? So 300 gallons, 400 gallons to break even, and then I start saving money. So that's why I don't use a distiller. And it's within tolerance. 3 to 6 parts of distilled water is considered 0. And what I do is, by the way, when I test the after, I subtract whatever was the particulate count of the before. In other words, I write down the before I make the silver, what the distilled water is, parts per million, and then I make the silver, test it, maybe I run it longer, test it again, and then I subtract the before, parts per million, and that's my true parts per million for silver is the difference. Okay? See if there's anything else. You don't have to test, because I've confirmed that what Steve and everybody else says is what you end up with is exactly what they say it is. You know? What else? Regina?
What was in the Flexner report?
Well, you'd have to read it. It was 500 pages. But basically what the Flexner Report did was it was a survey of all the medical schools in the country at the time, and how many of them practiced allopathic medicine, and then criticized them for not practicing allopathic medicine, and then promoted drugs as the super cure for the future, and recommended that Congress only support medicine practice in schools and standards that use surgery, drugs, and or radiation. Because radiation was already being used in 1936. Marie Curie died of radiation poisoning, okay? Because she treated herself with radioactive radium, thinking that it was a cure, and it actually caused cancer, and that's what killed Marie Curie. The inventor of radiation therapy died as a result of having radiation therapy. But that was in the Flexner Report, radiation, chemo, and surgery as the only acceptable medical standard, and only 4 schools out of 450 met the standard. And that's what the Flexner Report said. It was a crisis of humanity, quackery, et cetera, to disparage Native American, indigenous, and naturopathic medicine, to put them out of business. And it worked. It wasn't just a report. It was a report and allegedly Henry Ford donating like $20 million in bribes to congressmen that got the report pushed through in 1 year. See, that always gets left out too. For the year after Abraham Flexner and his brother submitted the report, they went around to every single congressman and offered them cash to pass it. Back then, you could do that openly. No, I'll buy you a house. I'll buy your kids' houses. And I'll give you cash. How about I do, what do you need? What do you want? Back then, that's the way they passed laws, is they went around people like, what do you want? What do you need? And when you had the big backers like Henry Ford, it was no problem. They sprung for it because they knew they were going to become billionaires very, very shortly after it was passed. And they did. That's like most people don't know, the Kennedy fortune was based on bootlegging alcohol and prohibition. They were criminals. Granddaddy Kennedy was one of America's top 10 most wanted criminals for a period of time. He was probably the single largest importer of illegal alcohol into the United States and the Prohibition. And that's where their millions came from crime. Al Capone worked for Joseph Kennedy. That's where he got his alcohol. It's like, Al Capone, big gangster, da-da-da. Okay, where did he get his alcohol? From Joseph Kennedy. From Grandpa Kennedy. Yeah.
The machine that you plug on the ears?
Biotuner.
Biotuner.
Okay, all right, I think that's good for now. Let's stop. We're going to take a lunch break now.